Welcome everyone, Ronin here. I put together my first critique of a video game. I've been playing strategy RPGs for about 25 years now, and I figured that what I put together here in this critique may help you decide whether or not the game is worth its steep price. Currently, at the time of making this video, it seems to me that we're entering a golden age of tactical RPGs. There are so many scheduled to release this year, it makes me wonder which one's going to come out on top, regardless of their budget. I think we should start with talking about graphics. Right now, I'm looking at the cinematics, and it looks great. The graphics are well done. It puts you in the world of Gears. It does feel like a Gears game, but there are some flaws. These people get knocked back, and after a flash, you're at the exact same place, and the corpser is there and people running away from it at the exact same location. Personally, I think that the blast should have knocked everybody out of the way. Now the cinematics is showing people fighting, even showcasing its iconic Brumac. A ton of locusts, but they feel more like Terminators than enemies that go from cover to cover. And that to me does make me feel like I'm in the Gears universe. And for me, graphics are not a big deal. I know it's the first thing you see, it's the first thing that immerses you into the game, but they do nail the Warzone aspect of the game. For the most part, the graphics are good. There are quite a few mishaps, or like things that seem less polished. If you look around the room, you have this red light glowing, it feels like you're maybe inside a bunker. And at first I thought they were introducing me to our squad, because it should be a 4-player based squad. But I quickly realized that the character models were not as hatched out as Gabe is. They're basically throwaway characters, and the game is telling me this. They're being mysterious about the main character here, and then they do a reveal, so they show that he's important. But then the others, you have a guy wearing a helmet, a guy with a blank face with dead eyes, a girl that doesn't really have any discernible features, and a guy holding a picture of his wife and baby, which is telling me this guy's gonna die. So why should I care about these characters if the game doesn't care about fleshing out these characters? One problem I have is the interaction of Gabe with the environment. Depending on which cut you look at, the red light does not interact with Gabe. I think the lack of attention to detail shows me a lack of quality control on the details of the game, which to me could affect later on with other aspects of the game. Now, I'm a big fan of the Gears lore. I really enjoy the gameplay, the aesthetics, the grittiness of the war zones, and the lore behind it. It almost reminds me of Warhammer 40k and Space Marines. To reinforce what I said earlier, the character model is hashed out. Sid looks cool. He's not gonna die. He's a main character. The others behind him, mind you, might as well be wearing red shirts. A lot of the physics of how the characters' bodies interact with each other, like each part of the body almost feel individual. They don't feel like they move in unison. For the most part, sometimes the body parts will clip into each other and just disappear within the other body part, instead of actually creating a physical change of, like, when you flex your bicep, it should move other parts of your arm and interact with each other. That's just physics. Now the cut coming up really gets to me. I don't know who made the decision. Seeing as other characters are very fleshed out, these guys, their eyes, they're dead. There's nothing, there's no detail. Why are you putting these guys in the foreground in a close-up when they look terrible? They don't look like Sid or Gabe, by far. They don't look like soldiers. They look like kids or like puppies looking at their master leave the house. It's telling me that they're useless without Gabe. And now we're done with the opening cutscene. This has to be the worst vehicle created ever. The front opens to let your soldiers out. It just doesn't make sense. That means that every time you get into the vehicle, you have to back out of wherever you were, turn around, and then move out. And to me, that's just so weird that you may as well be designing a vehicle for Monty Python. Looking at the game design, at the aesthetics, at the feel of the game, the vibe I'm getting, I truly feel that the developers did capture the essence of a Gears of War game in the franchise. Let's talk more about gameplay. The game at this point throws you into the tutorial. That's fine. You need to know how to play the game. You need to understand the mechanics. But if you're playing on a higher difficulty, you should have the option to cancel off the tutorial. The tutorial is part of the story, which kind of works. It's fine, but it gives you a false sense of what to expect from the game later on. Because if, like me, you start playing at a higher difficulty, you may not even notice that the enemies are actually on normal during the tutorial. After the first 3 fights that you do in the game, the enemies now scale to the difficulty that you actually now selected. So you might not even notice that they're 20% or even 50% stronger for the start of your game. And the problem is, with the skills and the abilities that they show you in the tutorial, it actually doesn't prepare you for what's to come on your first real mission. What they should have done is scaled up the enemies during the tutorial so that you would actually know and feel what you'll be experiencing next, or allowing you to skip it altogether. One thing that I do really like is the movement in this game, allowing you to move non-tile based. You're moving more an AP value to a movement distance that can be in any direction, much like Divinity Resistance 2. And I think that it's a pretty good thing to stay away from the typical XCOM tile-based movement. I also really like the idea of having 3 AP as opposed to 2, because then you can move, shoot, retreat if you need to. You have the ability to be more strategic with your moves than just move, shoot. Now here the game is trying to teach you the mechanics, but it's not doing well. What I did is I ended up moving next to the enemy and then using my chainsaw. What I should have done is just use my chainsaw in the first place, and I would have used only 1 AP instead of 2. And that's really important for later, and if people don't understand that right now, they may suffer later to know that you can or cannot use your chainsaw in one move. This would have allowed me to use an extra attack on the drone that's just sitting there. Now, one major critique I have to nail them for is the lack of saving. I understand they put checkpoints. I get that maybe they don't want people to save scum. Save scumming is a big part of XCOM, and maybe they want to get away from it. The problem with that, when you're trying to test things, and it's all based on a checkpoint, but the checkpoints are pretty far. They should be at maybe every turn or something. For example, the first time I got pinned down by a sniper, I'm like, oh, well, what happens? So I decided to move, and I got killed. I'm like, okay, so now I don't move when I'm pinned. I don't do anything. But I was moving from cover and the same cover, so it was just like shimmying over one space behind the same cover, using that cover, but still the sniper just killed me. So I'm like, okay, well, you really can't do anything. You can't even use the cover you're behind. But I had to learn that, and because of checkpoints, it took me probably 20 minutes just to get back to where I was, because the checkpoints are so far and few between. I think being able to save would be a big feature, especially for me now. I'm trying to put the video together, and I can't even select missions. I have no backlog of saves. I can't go and find a point and say, okay, I want to show you guys the boss fights. I want to show you guys what happens when a sniper does this. I can't do that. And that's a big flaw for me. I want to be able to teach or show things when I'm creating content, and I have to use a different way of showing you, or spend like 5, 6, 8 hours to grind my way back to that spot. If I were to want to show the corpser fight, I can't, because it's gonna take me way too long to get there. So I think that having at least the ability to either choose missions, save, or something else in there that's not just checkpoints. I truly believe though that being able to select your mission maybe after you've completed the main game would really help the enjoyment of the game, so that I can re-experience the corpser fight, maybe try different tactics, or maybe a higher difficulty, or even just like the Brumac. I only fought him once. Maybe I'd like to fight him again. Maybe that's what veteran missions should be instead of what it is now. One thing I do have to commend them on is that a lot of games I've played like this, like Wasteland 2, even XCOM, often enough I'm presented with a zone that has no cover. In this game, pretty much anything you see it, it's cover. I've not had a single issue where I couldn't go to an object and use it as cover. Everything is cover. The only thing I wish they would have done better is sometimes you'll have some areas where there's cover. It's almost like boxes are piled by a wall. I almost wish like they would have added that you could climb on those boxes and use that wall as cover, because then you could probably have a better advantage point towards some enemies. You could use it as elevated cover. You could use it as just cover where you can flank better. That's the only thing that I've seen many walls with boxes and crates stacked next on the wall, but you can't climb on the boxes. I wish that they would fix that maybe for the future, or maybe even for a sequel or DLC or something. For me, what the story really didn't give me any sense of satisfaction, and I feel it's a reoccurring theme in most Gears game, Gears 5 for example, Gears 4, is that you're fighting on a small scale. You're not really on a large scale fight, which could be fine. Is the only thing is, by the end, you don't really get the satisfaction. Like right now, you're grabbing the file for Ukon, which is the last bad guy. He's the main guy in the game. But I feel like the inciting incident could be something else. It could be that other human that is bombarding everything. I think his name is Pierce. I think they could have gone bigger and maybe give you a better resolution than just killing Ukon, which is one bad guy in the game. And really, did he have that much of an impact on the war? I'm left thinking about other games that have an epic villain. And off the top of my head, I'm not sure why, I have Diablo. You're gonna go fight and kill Diablo. He's the main villain. Ukon is not an epic bad guy, which in the end doesn't make me feel like my heroes are actually that amazing because they're fighting a weakling general. I think this story really needed something bigger, more epic, something to tie in maybe for the sequel. Because really, I didn't notice that this was 10 years prior to the main Gears series. I did not realize it was a prequel. I played through the whole game, and it wasn't until after that I realized it was a prequel. Now mind you, I'm not up on my Gears story. I did play the other games, I did watch the videos about the story, but I still didn't get that sense that it was a prequel. So in essence, doesn't that make your story doomed to fail because you won't get the satisfaction at the end? There wasn't really a link to the main story after. And if there was a link, I totally missed it. The only thing that comes to mind right now is the Hammer of Dawn bombarding the planet. Other than that, maybe I'm just not up on the story enough. And since I'm talking about Ukon, the biggest problem is that you don't even fight him. You don't even do anything to him. He's not really a threat. He's a threat in cutscenes, but you never interact with him. You don't even end up killing him. He just dies by proxy while you're fighting the other boss. So I think there's a real lack of satisfaction in the threat. It doesn't feel like a big deal. To put it in perspective, if you look at Xcom or even Phoenix Point, the enemy is worldwide. You have to save the planet. You have to fight off an invasion that's worldwide, not just local. Here, it's in one city. Do you even save the city when you get rid of Ukon? But in reality, what can one scientist do when it's a worldwide planet threat? How big is planet Sarah? I do realize it's not based on Earth. Some of my viewers did not realize that while I was on stream. Like, Ukon was not as strong as the Queen in, I think, Gears 2. Ram was in Gears 1. And, like, I feel like they have a lack of, like, really big bosses. Like, not size-wise. I just feel like Ukon is not larger than life. It should be like a sub-boss, if anything. He's not epic. One thing that they do well is the movement in this game. I don't just mean that the amount of movement you get for 1 AP and like moving from cover to cover, which is actually pretty brilliant. It's not a square-based medium where most other games like this are just tile-based, but the way the enemies move. One thing that really sucks in XCOM, or sometimes even Phoenix Point, how long you have to wait between your turns. And I find that Gears Tactics has a revolutionary way to make the enemies move at the same time, saving you that time from turn to turn. Especially when you're going to be faced with a ton of enemies. You're always going to be outnumbered. You're never going to be just 4 on 4. It's going to be like 20 on 4, maybe even 25 on 4. And at least this way, when the enemies all move together, it just saves that much time, which I think is super refreshing and a really good aspect of a game of this genre. It almost borders the real-time with pause type of game with a turn-based game. Now, if you think back to the tutorial and what I was saying, that it doesn't really tell you about the game, there's an option to put down landmines, and that's not really shown to you. I think it's a really big part of the game. For this to work though, you want to not push the objectives. You want to just take your time and prepare the fight and put it on your side. That's a big part of strategy. But without knowing that you could put mines, and it's even to the point that you could put a mine on an E-hole and blow it up before any enemies actually come out of it. I found out how to do that only through the achievements, and it said close an E-hole without any enemies coming out. And I was like, okay, there's gotta be a way. I just wish that the game would have told us in the tutorial about the mines. They only cover how to throw a grenade, but just the fact that they don't mention it in the tutorial for their first outing with this new game. Now let's talk classes and gear a bit. I'm a bit disappointed because you can't just pick up another gun. You only have the one that your class is assigned to and a pistol. To me, it's kind of disappointing because I know in the trailers, if I remember correctly, it mentions about picking up weapons, which I guess only includes the torque bow and the boom cannon. I don't really like being stuck with one weapon when the game boasts a really high customization. And for God's sakes, the shotgun. Can you at least let me switch the scouts? Because even right now, at point blank, I just missed 3 shots with the shotgun on a target that's literally licking the end of the barrel. I just don't get why developers always get shotguns wrong. Their aim is not either you point at somebody's chest or you miss. It just doesn't work that way. And I feel like if they looked into how Phoenix Point handles aiming and how you deal with accuracy in Phoenix Point, I feel like you may get a better understanding and get out of the XCOM point blank missing bullshit. I just feel that using a math-based equation only to deal with your aim, and maybe if you want to get away from that, give a guaranteed chance to hit if you're going to be exactly one tile or maybe 2 tiles away from the enemy, because it just doesn't make sense. You try to line up your cinematics and your gameplay to line up to what you see, and I know XCOM can be pretty bad for that, but I think that taking inspiration from XCOM in this case, it actually hurts the player's experience, especially when you're facing a ton of enemies and you're right next to the guy, and that's the one move that you need to land to be successful, and you miss 3 times in a row on an 80% chance to hit. And since the game boasts great character customization, let's talk about that a little bit and compare it to other games and see how Gears is pretty muddled and not enjoyable. It takes you away from the combat and away from the story, away from the game too much. They need to revise the UI. It seems like they wanted to give players a lot of customization, not just physically or aesthetically, but actually things that matter in the game. And you can see that with the options you have to put on your weapon. I think you have 5 options. The thing that's messed up is it's a drop-down menu type of thing. You scroll down, there's no way to compare your gear. There's just the stats on the side, and you have to hover over different weapons to see what they do, and it doesn't show you what you have equipped. And now the other thing is it's a red triangle that tells you that something is new. It's not telling you something is better, so you have to go check what the item is to make a decision, and none of it is streamlined. Like right now we're on Pablo. There's no way to know what Diaz is wearing. There's no way to know what the other characters have. And to top it all off, I'm hovering over a focus item that he has equipped, and there's an epic version of it just above, and there's no highlighting of anything from the game. And my big problem with that is that I don't want to spend all my game time in these menus. I want to spend it playing the game. Right now we have 23 of 26 gears, plus the 5 heroes with Cole. None of the gears is shared. Nothing is a quick indicator of who's wearing what. You just have to go through multiple menus and sub-menus to find the gear that you want to put on. To me, it's just a big turn off. That's probably the worst part of the game. But if you think about it, if that's the worst part of the game, it's an easy fix. At least I hope it's an easy fix. And if it's fixed, then to me, that would bring the rating of the game and the enjoyment of the game that much more higher. I think I spent 20 minutes just to get ready for one mission at some point. Just look at how XCOM does it and how simple the UI is. They could have done something very similar, doesn't have to be the exact same, or even Phoenix Point. You just have a quick reference of what you have on, make some tweaks, get out, go fight. Now let's talk about the biggest thing that's missing in the game, and I think it's an overworld. There's no overworld in this game. It's very linear, and I'm trying to think of almost every other strategy RPG out there, and I can't think of one that is linear except for Shining Force. And that game is like in the 90s. Even Final Fantasy Tactics had some overworld that wasn't so linear. By adding a layer of an overworld, or something bigger than just in combat, would add another goal, would add another layer of strategy and replayability that I think the game needs. It would actually make having multiple troops, like right now I had up to 20 troops, but it made no sense. Just use the heroes, level the heroes, who cares about the troops really? You use them on side missions that don't have any weight. If you had an overworld, then you can set up multiple vehicles, and then you can pick and choose who goes in those vehicles, or that the heroes are focusing on the story mission while your other characters are going to side missions. Let's say if you want to keep it to a city, it'll take you an in-game hour for your heroes to get from point A to point B. During that hour, which could be like a minute or 2, you could have another crew traveling to another area, trying to liberate people, trying to get resources, trying to get something else, and that's what the other troops could be bringing to the game. And I think that is a much needed component that is not inside this game. Every other game I can think of off the top of my head has this, and they don't have a 60 USD price tag. It was brought to my attention while I was streaming that there's a lack of stakes in this game. People can get wounded, can get injured, can die, but no one cares. So I think the lack there is the overworld. If you had a consequence to a hero getting hurt or to an ally dying, I think it would add more weight and put stakes to having an overworld in the game and increase the user experience. So the way we go from there, without having any overworld, it takes away from the scale of the game and the fact that you only have 3 acts. The game is short, too short. I commend them for making a story-driven game, but why did they make a game that inside the main story quest, they threw in side missions, but they're forced, they're not optional. If they were to separate those two, actually keep the story and the side missions separate. Give us more story missions, because those are actually fun, especially on your first playthrough, and then you introduce us some repeatable missions, because they got too boring too fast. By Act 3, I was almost ready to quit. I just kept playing because I was like, I may as well see the end. And even then, I was disappointed by the ending. I mean, they added boss fights, which is huge, because I don't remember XCOM actually having proper boss fights. I think XCOM 2 tried in their DLC, War of the Chosen, and I was kind of like meh with those boss fights. They were pretty negligible, but this game actually gave us some monster scale boss fights. Not units that only take 1 tile. Like the Brumac is massive. I wish they would have given us more boss fights, or at least sub-bosses, mini-bosses, something else, maybe some random events within these side missions, maybe an arena mode for the end game. It sucks because I've been asking for a game to give me some content after you finish the main game, to make it so that my characters I've been using in my squad aren't useless and just sitting there. But the way it's been done, I don't really like it, even though it's what I've been wanting for a long time. But these veteran missions are just uninspiring. What could also help, maybe, is a New Game Plus. New Game Plus usually adds some replayability to games. And I'm trying to think, because of the whole story side and side missions and then just veteran missions, if you look at like Dark Souls is really great for the gameplay, and there's minimal story. The story is being told to you, but not in your face. It's kind of hidden story. It's not story driven. You can replay it and just not even realize what you're learning about the story. If you think the same about XCOM, Phoenix Point, they're not story driven, and yet they work. The gameplay just carries them with a really small story. I just think that the veteran system at the end, I'm just not invested. I managed to do 3 side missions to then unlock 1 veteran mission, which is essentially a side mission. So 4 side missions to get 1 veteran point. But what do veteran points do? Is it a ladder? Is it ranking? I recently logged into XCOM 2 and I saw they had a challenge mode. I haven't played it in a long time, but maybe that could be something that would have been implemented in Gears Tactics to keep it fresh. Use your troops maybe, instead of just being what XCOM 2's version is. They need new game modes. The game modes that they have some good ones. They have a capture the point, hold the point, the king of the hill. I enjoyed that one at first. It was really fun, but then I started having to do one where you have 2 points to hold and only 2 characters. Why? The game is based off of a 4-player squad, but now you only bring 2 people and you have to hold 2 points. Like, I like a challenge as much as the other guy, but I have 20 other troops just waiting to join the fight, sitting in a UI base. Why? At this point, I'm no longer enjoying the game, because now I'm just trying to figure out the puzzle to try to make the fight work. While I was still during the main story, my first veteran side mission was bring 1 sniper and go rescue 2 other soldiers within 15 turns. It was pretty hard, because then you're faced against 8 enemies before you get the first soldier. And what I really hate of this mission type are the timers. Why add timers? I know XCOM's been criticized a lot about the timers. They don't make sense. In this, they throw away a line of dialogue that says, we gotta get there before they execute them or whatever. And it's like, why did they capture them I think what would have worked better, if you want to do hidden timers. I mean, Gears has a one game type that you're running away from fire. You're running away from explosions every turn. I love that. That's a timer. But you don't notice the timer. You're too busy running away from the explosion. You just want to progress and win and not get bombarded. And it is challenging. And it is still timed. You still have to rush. You're still pushing the player, but without an arbitrary just number in top left corner of the map. What I think for these rescue missions could have worked better is maybe the soldiers are in a tiny little camp, or they're hiding in a corner. There's something preventing them from getting out. You're about to go rescue them. Maybe there's an enemy squad that is actually coming to kill them or hunting them. Maybe like a boomer or something, because they're just troops. They're not actually cog, so they can't really face off against the boomer or the ones with the torque bow. I think having that, and your goal is to either intercept that squad before it reaches those soldiers, or save those soldiers and then go find that squad as they're coming. Now, it could be scripted to be 15 turns. At least there's an element that is making you want to go save them before the timer runs out. But you don't have to tell the players it's 15 turns. They might never even notice. But what could be good is you can slow them down. And if you want to change the analogy of a hunting squad, so if you think about Phoenix, and in Gears 4, he gets swallowed by this bug, and you have to chase that bug to then rescue him. That's like an entire act, or an entire chapter. What if they would have put that in this game? Maybe a soldier gets swallowed. Maybe it's one of your soldiers, and your goal is to save that person before that enemy runs away from the map or runs out of the map. And throughout the game, you can either set off explosions or shoot its legs, slow it down, knock it out somehow. Even while I'm editing, I'm thinking of Divinity Sin 2. There's a fight where you get swallowed, all your characters individually, unless you can fight them off, and then you have to regroup. You have to bring your characters back together through a dungeon, and that could be another game mode where you want to split up the characters, sure, or the squad, and then they have to find each other and then fight back together against a bigger threat. And that would be more meaningful of a timer than just a number on the top left of your screen. The results could be that you lose that hero, or you lose the game, but that could be kind of boring. Maybe if you fail, you have to go and find that hero as a victim, or being tortured, something happening in an enemy camp. That would add playability to the game without being boring, tied more to a world than just clicking in a menu, a sub-menu to choose missions. Another aspect of the game that I really like is the stability of it. I was playing Xcom Chimera Squad last night, and it crashed, I think, twice in 30 minutes, and then another 4 times throughout the stream. And I found that really annoying, and this is why in Gears Tactics, I'm kind of happy they did it right. I don't remember crashing once, maybe once throughout my whole campaign. It's very stable, and that to me adds to the enjoyment, because sometimes when I crash, I'm just like, why do I even bother playing? Especially if it's twice in 30 minutes, I'm just reminded that I'm just wasting my time instead of being immersed into the experience. Now, let's talk about the rewards you get from completing a level. I found that the leveling was really slow, which doesn't really show on this screen here, because I ended up doing a test to see how XP works, and it's really only about killing and not completing missions. I was completing mission after mission successfully, and I found that my characters were barely leveling, that by the end of the game I was only level 6. I managed to get to level almost 4 by just grinding for about an hour on the one level with unlimited enemies respawning. So on that, if that's how leveling works and how you get rewards, because you only get rewards from completed levels and picking up gear throughout the level, it would be a nice thing to have enemies maybe dropping loot, and maybe even having a game mode that has more waves, that you fight off waves, like a last stand mode, if leveling is important to you. But the thing is, leveling's not really that important other than your heroes, because whenever you do rescue mission, you're rewarded with soldiers that are your level or at the level of the mission, so you never really have to level your low B troops. I feel that's, again, making me not want to invest time in the game, because none of it really matters. There's no stakes. But then you get your gear, and this is where I'm really weary and lose touch with the developer, they gave us loot boxes. Now in the trailers, it did say no microtransactions, but then why do you get your gear in loot boxes? What's there to gain? Like, you waste time having to wait for the animation of opening each individual box, and it just really adds on to the bogged down, messy inventory management system that Gears has to offer. Like, were they planning on microtransactions? Were they planning on loot boxes that you have to pay for or wait hours to open? I just don't see why they would go with this mechanic. Maybe this was an early adopted system and they didn't think or bother to change it. It makes me weary because it makes me distrust this developer that released a game with a $60 price tag and there's a semblance of a microtransaction loot box. To be honest with you, I'm still on the fence whether it was worth the full ticket price. I think they had great potential. I find myself going to other games like Phoenix Point, Fort Triumph, Xcom, and Xcom Chimera Squad came out 4 days before Gears Tactics. Now, it's definitely not as polished as this game, but it came out for a price tag of about $10 USD. And for $10, I can't complain about it because I'm playing it more than I'm playing Gears Tactics. And the replayability of Chimera Squad is better. I'm not sure what the plan for the developers are for ongoing content. I hope there's gonna be some DLC or something coming out, and maybe not too expensive DLC. I'm just worried about where the project's money went to when lower budget games seem to be more enjoyable, at least having a longer lasting impression on me. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Hopefully my first critique was informational and helps you make a decision, or even just gives you another perspective on the game, and that somehow as we move forward we can improve the quality of certain video games that are going to come out in the future. I'm not to the point that I'm giving up on this series. If there's a sequel to this, I may actually give it a shot. Because, for example, I was a fan of Borderlands, and then Borderlands 2 came out, and it just blew Borderlands out of the water. I enjoyed Borderlands 1, but when the sequel came out, it was just that much better. And I'm going to remain hopeful that maybe Gears does the same thing for a future outing in the series. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and let me know what you think about this video. I'm planning on putting out more content like this and keep going with my guides and being active like I was before I went to school. And now that COVID-19 hit and everybody's sitting at home, I think I'm going to try to take this opportunity to keep making content and doing what I really enjoy doing in the first place. Have a good night, everyone.